This is my Comm 101, uh, Comm 101 argumentative speech. Yeah, Bert, you're probably going to be the only one who sees this, but it's up on YouTube for all eternity now, so. Anyways. According to U.S. estimates, the Islamic Republic of Iran has spent over $16 billion in recent years supporting militant groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Iranian supportive groups such as the Houthis and others is dangerous and destabilizes the Middle East, preventing it from having peace. Therefore, the U.S. should exert pressure and take limited and targeted strategic action to cripple Iran's ability to fund these groups. The controversy here is that people do not want U.S. involvement in Iran to spiral into another Middle Eastern forever war like Iraq or Afghanistan, and that it will waste lives and resources for little to no gain. The main sides of this issue are defense policymakers, specifically Pete Hegseth and the Department of Defense, who argue that it improves national security, regional stability, and protects Americans and American interests. And on the other hand are anti-war lawmakers like AOC and Ilhan Omar, who argue that it could become a forever war and that the war will do more harm than good for the people of Iran and America. In this speech, I'll be advocating for continuing pressure on and reduction of the Iranian command system, protecting stability and reducing funding for militant groups. This affects me because gas prices are increasing. I want to know why I'm being affected by something half a world away. Also, I believe it's important to keep a watch on world events to be able to see trends and protect yourself. It's also important to see where history is repeating itself so that tragedies will not be repeated. I've looked at sources from AP, Associated Press, Reuters, and Al Jazeera, and other news agencies to try and get a full picture of the war and its effects. I've also done research about other recent Iranian and Middle Eastern conflicts to learn more about the situation in the Middle East. And I would like to advocate for a continuation of the pressure on Iran. Now I will explain why it's important to continue putting pressure on Iran, but in a limited and targeted form as to be more effective and avoid large-scale war. I'm advocating for this because there's just injustice in Iran. And as Martin Luther King Jr. states in his letter from Birmingham jail, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. In Iran, an autocratic theocracy controls political and social life. If meaningful pressure is not applied and efforts to expand freedoms are not supported, then this system of repression is going to persist and further entrench unjustness. In order to solve this, I propose that the Iranian people should be given the room to take back their freedoms if wanted. The main problem stopping protests and actual change is the IRGC, or the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps. The IRGC was founded by Ayatollah Khomeini in 1979 to, quote, ensure the integrity of the Islamic Republic. This means that the IRGC generally prevents foreign influence in Iran, thwarts coups by traditional military, and crushes, quote, deviant movements. However, the IRGC has also been gaining power in Iran, and it is estimated by Al Jazeera that they control a significant portion of Iran's economy, with some estimates placing this at around 1/3. The IRGC is Iran's de facto coast guard and their de facto national guard. The IRGC, however, is not to protect the people, but the regime, which allows them to, during riots and protests, kill thousands of people and have no consequences, as reported by Amnesty International. As of today, there are still active anti-government protests all over Iran, and because this is a threat to the theocracy, the IRGC has taken action. And according to the human rights activist news agency, or Harana, the total number of confirmed deaths has reached 6,126. Of these, 5,777 were protesters, 86 were children under age 18, and 49 were non-protesters or civilians. The number of deaths still under investigation stands at 17,091. The total number of arrests has reached 41,880. The number of severely injured individuals, 11,009. 245 cases of forced confessions broadcasts have been reported. The number of individuals summoned by security institutions is at 11,024. Overall, 651 protest-related incidents have been recorded across 200 cities in all 31 provinces. The Iranian government has also shut down the internet to the public, so we are probably missing a lot of information about the protests, so these figures could be larger. The solution I propose is to start targeting IRGC local facilities such as housing, financial support, and depots through limited, precise strikes on confirmed or suspected IRGC and government targets. The IRGC has a HQ in each province with its own support, and if we take down that support, the IRGC in the region will become unstable, increasing the likelihood that protesters will be safer and be able to push for change. If the IRGC weakens, its ability to suppress dissent decreases, creating the opportunity for civilians to establish a new government if they choose. Iran is stable because of the IRGC, but Iran also contributes to a lot of instability in the Middle East by supporting and funding militant groups like the Houthis and Hezbollah. If the theocratic regime is not stopped from supporting dangerous militant factions in the Middle East, then the Middle East will continue to be destabilized by attacks and wars. If funding continues to Iran's proxy groups, they will continue to attack their neighbors and destabilize the region. In 1982, Hezbollah was formed in southern Lebanon, backed and funded by the newly installed theocratic regime in Iran. The Brookings Institute states that, quote, "From its founding until 9/11, Hezbollah had killed more Americans than any other terrorist group, and even today it is still far ahead of the Islamic State, or ISIS, on this score." Another Iranian proxy is the Houthis in Yemen, who have been fighting the Yemeni government for 12 years. The Houthis have disrupted the Red Sea, which carries about 12% of global trade, while Iran influences the Strait of Hormuz, which carries about 20 to 25% of the world's oil supply. Together, this means that a significant share of global energy and trade flows through areas controlled by or influenced by Iran and its proxies. If Iran's ability to support groups such as the Houthis and Hezbollah is destroyed, they will lose their primary benefactor and start losing ground in their regional conflicts because they no longer have funding. The loss and weakening of these groups will make the region safer and allow for greater stability over time. This year already, there have been over 180 terrorist or militant events in the Middle East perpetrated by Iran and their proxies against U.S. military elements within a short time frame, averaging roughly 2 attacks daily. Middle East terror and militia activity is heavily influenced by Iran, with the removal of support, it will fall significantly. Despite the benefits that could be gained from engaging with Iran, some people believe that going to war with Iran is not in our national interest and will only harm us. The opposition to the Iran conflict comes from worries about increasing gas prices, the chance of accidentally killing innocents, and worries that it will make the region more unstable. Opponents of the Iran conflict would argue that innocents would be harmed and gas prices will increase. However, the strikes that have been happening have occurred on military and high governmental targets in Iran, not against innocent civilians. And continuing this approach with strict targeting reduces the risk of civilian casualties compared to broader warfare. It is important to note that, yes, there have been accidents that have hit civilian targets, but those are in the very, very small minority. Opponents also worry about gas prices, but the USA does not do business with Iran, and while global markets were initially affected, prices have begun to stabilize, reducing long-term concern. People may say that I'm a war hawk and that it will damage the region more than it helps. However, this criticism assumes that my argument is in favor of large-scale war or long-term military occupation, which is not what I'm arguing. The opposition is responding as if I'm advocating for a full-scale war, when in reality I'm advocating for a limited and targeted pressure on Iran aimed at reducing the IRGC and Iranian government's ability to fund and support militant groups, with the goal of stabilizing the region while also allowing the Iranian people the opportunity to change their government if they choose. I've shown that the opposing side's arguments are not fully on point and thus do not directly address the policy being proposed. Altogether, the main inconsistency is that the opposition is critiquing a policy as if it is war or large-scale conflict, while the actual argument being made is for limited targeted pressure designed specifically to avoid those outcomes. As a result, their criticism does not fully apply to the position I am presenting. Although critics argue that we should not intervene, this concern is weakened by the benefits outweighing the costs. Having addressed these objections, the evidence consistently supports the continuation of pressure on Iran. All of this is the reason why the Department of Defense should continue applying targeted pressure on Iran to stabilize and safeguard the Middle East. When the theocracy falls, the people of Iran will be safer, freer. Terrorism and civil wars will slow down due to a lack of support, and the benefits outweigh the possible costs. Overall, this will make the Middle East and the world a better and safer place. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.